Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin Familia. It's the NFL Insider Series. You know what? We're down about like the final 10 right now. And it's been nothing short of awesome. You have all been watching so much and giving great feedback. Keep those comments coming and make sure that when you put those comments, also hit the like, also hit the subscribe button. I'm telling you, our numbers are growing, and it's just been wonderful. This is really just the kickoff point so much for the redraft season, and it's time for you're going to get so much great content even after this. So promise for you, Familia FFB on YouTube. Also, make sure when you go to underdogfantasy.com, use that promo code Familia23. You're going to get matched up to the first $100. So best ball season, Familia. Best ball drafts are happening all the way up to kickoff. In September, that Thursday night with Chiefs Lions. Keep drafting. Might even win some money. So, Familia, our invitada, I swear, I was so happy that she said yes, to my invitation 2 years ago for the first time I did this, and just so happy that she keeps coming back. I mean, one of the preeminent voices when it comes to Houston Texans coverage, and on the Houston Chronicle. Somehow she also is a lawyer, and that attorney life can be kind of busy. But hey, you know what? She gives that great analysis, and I just swear, and also Houston through and through, Texas through and
Yes.
through, mi amiga. Stephanie Stradley, the Houston Chronicle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So happy to have you back. And you know what? And this third year in a row, and third new regime in a row.
Yes.
Well, I think first we're going to start on the offense, and you got
Yes.
the new young quarterback, CJ Stroud, number 2 pick in the draft. Honestly, that game he had in the college
Yeah.
football semifinals was one of the best games I've seen. It to me that I go back to Deshaun Watson carving up
Wait,
Alabama
wait,
2
wait,
years
wait.
in a row.
We just refer to him as number 4 right now.
Oh, number 4. Sorry. Well, when number 4 was at Clemson,
Yes.
so I always look at those kind of players who, when they do well against future NFL players.
Yeah.
Now, see, the track record for rookie quarterbacks is not the best, but I think you saw some traits in the balls that he was throwing. What were some of the things that you liked that could portend future success? Maybe not this year, or maybe some inconsistency.
You know, I don't want to be limiting as to what can or can't happen, because there have been rookies, particularly in the modern era, who
Yeah.
have flashed right away. And they've already been kind of building different things into their systems. Like, they didn't change their GM and change their head coach at the same time. They have some of their staff coming back. What I will say is, I have seen a number of quarterbacks come into the building, and we're like, we got this free agent, we got this, and sometimes early, like, OTAs, you can't really see a ton. They're not wearing pads, a lot of that. But I can say this: if he, at this point in the off season, he looked good. I would say he looked, by my eyes, better than number 4's rookie year. Like, number 4's rookie
Oh,
year, I was like, I'm waiting to see something. And then it turned out that what he could do the best is the off schedule stuff. Like, the offense that they were running was not the easiest offense for quarterbacks and wide receivers. That New England offense is a challenge for people not named Tom Brady. Just to be fair to number 4 in that. So, like, basically number 4 was, hey, the play's breaking down, I'm going to do hero ball. And, being able to do things off schedule is a valuable tool, but it wasn't something that you would see necessarily in training camp very well, because nobody's supposed to hit the quarterback. You're supposed to get rid of the ball quickly, like, You're not trying to extend the plays too much because really you're trying to get your mental clock to get rid of the ball quickly. So those skills were really not seen that much in training camp. This off season, and I know it's so small, it has been the most encouraging thing that I have seen since the Kubiak era, which that, whatever you thought about him as an offensive coordinator, his offenses looked professional. It's a very crisp camp, very efficient, where there's not a lot of standing around by the quarterbacks. One of the things I mentioned in the piece is the Andre Johnson's standard for practice was if the ball is catchable, you have to catch it. And if you're doing drills against air where there's no defensive back there, you cannot be dropping catchable balls. Like you can't, and that, they kept on trying back then to draft all these number 2s to be across from Andre Johnson and value picks and all that, but then they couldn't catch the ball in training camp, and then they weren't catching the ball in games, and then they were sat. And that's why they had to go for a first-round pick in DeAndre Hopkins eventually, and then the 2013 season was an absolute nightmare in ways that I have preferred to pour bleach in my brain. But what I'm saying is it's very crisp. There are less drops of balls that you would not expect to be dropped. There's a lot of practice with purpose. And they don't always win because, there's a defense on the other side that is also working on their own things. But it's been delightful. Now, the way that they have OTAs set up and mini camps is a lot of times you're seeing 2 quarterbacks at a time throw the ball on both sides of the field. Just normal drill stuff. And so they're just kind of switching, like kind of rotating out. So you can see them kind of side by side. And the quarterbacks that they have right now is Case Keenum, who was drafted by the Houston Texans out of the University of Houston, very productive college quarterback, showed some things his rookie year that kept him on the squad, even though he didn't have like the measurables that you would want physically, typically from your quarterback. I mean, he did remarkable things as somebody who was an inexperienced quarterback and is still in the league. So he comes back to town. And as I said in my piece, he knows where the light switches are. He knows this offense. He's a leader, and he uses every bit of his athletic ability to perform, because you can talk process all you want, but if the ball doesn't go for a touchdown, then you didn't do your job. So, and then they have Davis Mills, who I felt bad for Davis Mills not really being in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
He's been on the team for a couple of years. He's a very promising guy coming out of high school. He's one of those COVID casualties from college where he didn't get to really play the way that he wanted to play because it disrupted a lot of people's lives. And the offenses that he was playing in, last year, there were a lot of good coaches on the offensive side of the ball, but the stew was not something that I don't think it put players in the best situations to succeed. Now, I'm very excited with what this offense is because, we had Purdy starting a playoff last year as, given his background, which is a really hard thing to do. This is a very quarterback-friendly offense. And for Texan fans out there who are familiar with the Kubiak version, the way that they've discussed it this year, because I asked, is this the same offense or what's different? He goes, yeah, a lot of the same concepts are the same concepts that we have seen here. And, they were mentioning, players back in the day looking at cut-ups from the Houston Texans of how the Houston Texans did certain things. However, defenses have changed and offenses change with that. And so, yeah, there's some wrinkles that are specific to modern football that we should be seeing this year, assuming that, the development happens and the players can get to the point that they are. But I'm curious to see what Davis Mills can do in a quarterback-friendly offense and being in the league for a little bit longer, where he's in a difficult situation with maybe not as full of support as he should have. And then CJ Stroud, like when you see him compared to the other quarterbacks, it just looks effortless. He throws a very catchable ball. It's clear that his teammates are responding to him. He's publicly saying the things that he should be saying. He's working with wide receivers in the off season, which is what the best quarterbacks do, because he himself is not in the most ideal situation. Like, Patrick Mahomes, he sat, but he was sitting in a situation where there was already an established quarterback in that situation, an established head coach and coordinator. There were some established players around him, and then he was stepping in with his natural ability. So that's an easier situation. But whoever was going to step into the situation as a rookie quarterback for the Houston Texans in 2023, he has a challenge, but it sounds like he's up for the challenge, and we'll have to see in training camp, because this staff is going to make everybody earn it, because frankly, Houston is a little damaged on the quarterback position. There is not a jersey that has been worth purchasing as a Houston football fan at the quarterback position since Warren Moon. Okay. So, people in Houston paid for years to watch David Carr's development, and all of his teammates had to endure some very rough quarterback play. But, coordinators can be difference makers. Kubiak's first year with Carr improved him. Then they got rid of him because they saw what they could see, despite he's still having years left on his contract. They brought in somebody else. They brought in competition for the quarterback position, and the sacks went down by half, by just another year and a different quarterback. And so there's that damage, but then there's also the damage of, playing quarterback position is hard, and you need actual support. You need, and not just like magical thinking that if I work hard enough, things will work. You need actual support, a scheme that is a proven scheme that a variety of quarterbacks have succeeded in, or at least thrived in. Because as I understand it from talking to various quarterbacks over many years about this type of offense, there is always a place for the ball to go. It isn't intended to go to one guy or the other, but if you are somebody who is above and beyond the rest of your teammates, yeah, you're going to get thrown into, they'll throw into double teams if you're good enough to deal with the double teams. But ideally, the way the offense is supposed to work is all the skill positions should be targets, because they want to put pressure on defenses. That you can't just ignore the fullback. You can't ignore the running back. You can't ignore the tight end. The tight end is not just a skinny offensive lineman. That, there was a time that the Texans had like 3 tight ends that had tons of receptions. Now, that was partially because their wide receiver core was struggling, but everybody who's a skill position should be a receiving target.
Right. And,
there's always should be a place for the ball to go. But, it's once you learn the offense, now that's going to be, I think, Stroud's hardest challenge is, just A, basic rookie stuff, B, coming into a situation where everybody's learning a new offense, and then C, you have these long play calls. So you just, it's a big challenge, but it sounds like he's up to the challenge. And though a lot of Texan fans know this, the quarterback coach is Gerard Johnson, former quarterback. He's been a few places, really good communicator. And he is one of the people that saw CJ Stroud at a very young age and had mentored him some and had worked with him some. So if we're talking about any team in the league who should have known Stroud better than anybody, it should be the Houston Texans, because their quarterback coach had worked with him before.
So yeah, that was good smoke screen to hide that fact, because
I don't think it was. No, I don't think it was hidden. I just think they were trying to keep things pretty quiet. Like I had heard some things because just people tell me stuff.
Right.
I had heard some things, and people were like, "Oh, well, they're into this guy or that guy or this guy," and I'm like, I'm just telling you, you should be open to the possibilities, because they are open to the possibilities, and they are going to trust their evals. And as I understand it, their evals were, there are less than 10 elite prospects in this draft. They had lots of ammunition. There's only so many young players that they want to incorporate on a team at any one time, because it's really hard for young players to lead young players. And so they're like, hey, if we think these guys are the best offensive and defensive player in the draft, you don't just hoard ammo. Sometimes you use it. And,
Right.
if you trust your evals, use your ammo. And it really didn't hurt them that bad, because they have ammo next year. And I think some of the considerations by people as well, there's some really great quarterbacks in next year's draft, and you might miss out on those guys. But, as I learned many times, tomorrow is not guaranteed for the players that you project, or that your ability to get those players, or at some point, to the people inside and outside the building, you have to show that you're serious about football, because people have their own opinions on football. And if you're not showing that you're serious football team, then you're relevant. And one component of a serious football team, other than having a legitimate head coach, is option at quarterback. And he's an option at quarterback. And I don't have a problem with them taking a big swing to see what they have in him, but also knowing that, he's being pressed because Davis Mills is in a new scheme and is a hard worker and keeps his mind about him, and was also a promising player. And Case Keenum, he knows how to deal. No.
Yeah, he's the veteran. Yes, the veteran presence.
But nobody's like, oh, the future of the Houston Texans is Case Keenum holding down the fort. But as far as I guaranteed, and there's many possibilities. But I have to say, there had been some reports coming out of OTAs and mini camps of, wow, CJ Stroud's, I like the way he throws the ball. I like how he competes. I like what I'm seeing. And sometimes you hear those reports, and I don't want to name names because it gets kind of mean, where somebody's like, this quarterback looks great. And you're like, what? How can you be so tall and getting your ball batted down every time? No names. Anyway, I'm just saying, as like everybody has their own views of things, and my view of things is, at least at this point in time, I like what I see, in a way that is remarkable to me, and I want to be relieving to other people, because this looks like NFL football. Looks like NFL football.
For the first time in a while for you. Oh, well, let's run over to the running backs real quick.
Yeah.
So Dameon Pierce was one of the players that I remember asking you about, and you said that he had a shot. So 939 yards last year. So they didn't add anyone in the draft, but they did add Devin Singletary. Obviously at OTAs and minicamp, running backs are they, it's all because of the passing, like you mentioned in the article. But going into the season, does it look like Pierce is still kind of like the
Well,
front runner?
I will say, this offense is very running back friendly. Like
Yeah.
when we started talking to Dameon and Devin about, hey, lots of people put up some yards in this offense and, both running and receiving. Talk about eyes lighting up. I mean, you know, they're like, yeah, we've been watching cut-ups of what our responsibilities are. And yeah, this is great. I mean, the biggest thing is, from a fantasy perspective, which I get that there's people out there that care about it. From a fantasy perspective, I don't know how much committee there's going to be because, Dameon Pierce didn't finish the season because he got hurt.
Right.
Part of that is a lot of his running was very physical. Like he was making a lot of his own yards. And even though they didn't draft running back, they brought other guys in to compete. And one of the people that they brought in is Xavier Valade.
Oh yes.
Like early OTAs, mini camps, it's hard to say a lot about the players because they don't have pads on. But I think that there's opportunities. And I think the key thing for fantasy people is watch who stays healthy because, camp is hot and it can be really hard just from soft tissue, like to keep hydrated enough that you're not having like, hamstrings, things like that. So that's the first thing. Both Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary are not the biggest guys. There have been successful guys, not the biggest guys that have run in this offense.
Right.
And, Dameon Pierce is not that small. I mean, he's listed as 5'11". I'm not sure that's right. But I mean, we'll see how they move guys around. Like a key thing, I'm just mentioning the size part of it, is this offense wants your running backs to be able to pass protect. And the coordinators that come through this system do not want guys on the field unless they are convinced that they are going to protect the quarterback. And then I guess that's especially important when you're trying to develop a quarterback. But I think that they are going to run a lot because ideally the game script is they're going to pass on first down in the first half of games. They're going to put a lot of aggression. They're going to really wear on defenses, make them really defend, try to put up points early. And then second half, they just keep running it. And, that's when the offensive linemen are real happy to just keep on letting it go. Now that's hard to do, dealing with holds. Because holds sometimes can mess with the running game. But I mean, ideally that, and D'Amico Ryans has made it really clear, like he wants the defense to get the ball back. Get the ball back. Either you're going to do takeaways or you're going to stuff them on third down. So that's the intention. Like I think, especially if you're trying to protect a young quarterback, you're not going to try to put them in too many bad situations. And the best way to not do that is to have a credible running game. And this scheme is intended to have credible runners. And the only reason I mentioned Valade is like, why did they make him a priority to pick up? And, if you look at his background, he's not as heavy as the other guys, a little bigger. He's fast. I want to say he's one of the faster people in the combine. And, sometimes you can get some value guys, at the end of the draft or undrafted because the modern NFL doesn't value running backs as much as they used to. And, Arian Foster was an undrafted free agent. And, sometimes if you put guys that have good qualities in a running back friendly system, they can shine. So like, I would just say, keep your ears open. maybe there's one guy that, like Dameon last year, one guy, he pretty much demanded the rock until, he got injured and didn't finish. But, just keep your ears open to,
Mhm.
like, you staying healthy, all the little things, the coaches will start talking about all the little things that they're looking for, and what they're really doing is telling everybody, hey, you can't just run, like, it's not just one cut and run, which is what, like, they don't want any negative yards. They just want to keep putting pressure. But I think the key thing is they need to do everything if they're going to be on the field and get as many touches as they want to get.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be that. This season, I could still see. I mean, just well, I love this offense. And the other thing about you mentioned about this offense, that they do like the 49ers in the past. Even with Christian McCaffrey, other running backs are getting involved in
Yes.
that. So it looks like, I mean, both of them are going to contribute a lot during the season. So I think
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I would think, barring any kind of injury in training camp, yeah, I think that's going to be the way to go, because they've been on the field before.
Yeah, total, and it's a total meritocracy. I remember Elijah Mitchell, undrafted free eight, or no, like sixth or seventh round pick, ending up getting the starting job over Trey Sermon 2 years ago. So who was a second round pick. So they it's all about earning it. So the wide receivers.
That's up
You,
in the
you
air.
yeah, no pun intended. You got Nico Collins, got Robert Woods, the the veteran. You've got John Metchie coming back from not only a torn ACL but also leukemia. Um, is it? And
Tank
that's it.
Dell,
Tank Dell.
Noah
That's right.
Brown. Noah Brown was actually offered in front of the media to talk for a little bit, which is,
Oh,
they've
that's
been
right.
putting the
Visual
vets
aid.
in front of the media the most. Just, but I mean, he's a player who was, by his own admission, fairly raw coming into the NFL, and has shown
Mhm.
some things and wants to earn it. Like, it is a very hungry group. It's really hard to tell on the outside, especially this early, who's going to be the guy. And I'm not sure that's going to be obvious early. Especially, we don't know who the starting quarterback is. Like,
Is
we're
though is
assuming
Wood
that it's
is
CJ Stroud, maybe.
Though is Woods being kind of like that veteran presence, because he was, I
Yeah,
mean, me being a Ram fan, that was one of the things that he was like,
solid guy.
yeah.
Like, no, and and in some ways, I hope, particularly in training camp, that the fans get to see more the the players
Uh-huh.
and just hear them. Like, there's a bunch of incredible players that are hungry and are competing, what D'Amico Ryans would say, the right way. And
Oh, awesome. Well, what two last questions on the offense.
yeah,
John Metchie, I think he was dealing
yeah.
with a little injury, but
We don't really know the John Metchie stuff. Like, I think that they have a number of guys in camp that are going to be really competing at kind of slot position guys.
mhm,
Like, Tank Dell was
right.
drafted this year from the University of Houston, and I mean, all the reports are that Metchie is on track.
Okay.
Obviously, leukemia diagnosis. That makes kind of returning back into NFL practice a little harder, but, like, mentally, if there's a guy that can do it, it's him. Like, he's just a very tough individual, but at the same time, they can't just ink him in, because he's never played at the highest level, and so you don't know how somebody's going to be until they're put in the position. So like, the wide receiver group is a competition, wide competition, and whoever performs, in practice. And what's great this year is they're actually facing other teams in practices. Like, they don't have as many preseason games, and you can see a certain number of things from teammates practicing against each other, but sometimes it's good to bring other teams into the mix. And so they're doing that against two teams this year Like, they're not afraid of competing. They're not afraid of finding out who they are. And we're going to find out a lot of that stuff. Now, that doesn't create a lot of certainty for the fantasy football community. And I'm just saying, just keep listening.
Right.
Keep listening. Like Xavier Hutchinson is one of those players, he's drafted this year that people have been, and why is that? Well, he had a couple flashy catches in practice where you're like, okay, like the kind of draft they did this year for wide receivers and some of the free agents that they brought in is they were targeting guys that have been very, very productive. Tank Dell, very productive wide receiver. Xavier Hutchinson, very productive wide receiver. So like they didn't get like these developmental guys like, hey, this guy ran a 40 fast in a straight line. These are wide receivers first. And then the question is, okay, can you develop them fast enough in your scheme to show their talents? But like there were plenty of kind of like, oh, I'm looking at this like, oh gosh, Nico Collins.
Right.
Like, there were a number of times last year, it's like, I'm really enjoying what he can do in the end zone. Because especially for, just generally in the NFL, I have figured that a lot of times young quarterbacks very much enjoy tall targets. Easy to see targets.
Yep.
And in this particular offense, you've seen tight ends who are on the smaller side of tight ends be, Hall of Famers in this offense. And then you've seen big wide receivers do some mischief with people because A, they can block. So they're opening up holes for the running game. And B, they're just big targets that, with the chaos that a rookie is seeing, is like, okay, I'm going to put it in the end zone where just this tall guy can get it. Good luck, 5'10" defensive back. This is a bad matchup for you. And this offense is supposed to go, okay, where is our matchup? Who is it that we're going to embarrass this week? And if you're running it the correct way, you can embarrass defenses. That's why, defensive coordinators, they are in rough shape these days because the rules are all supposed to be favoring the offense. And so like you see all the defensive coordinators playing musical chairs because it's really hard to maintain defense at a high level over time.
One last one, Dalton Schultz.
Yeah.
You mentioned he might be very important in this offense this year.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, good head on his shoulders. He's been a productive player for Dallas. He's on a 1-year deal. He came to the Texans because this is a very friendly to tight end offense, as I was mentioning earlier. So if you are a tight end that can catch the ball and has good hands and, has been productive, if you stay healthy, you're going to be a target. You're just going to be a target. I would be surprised if he isn't. And the only way that it wouldn't be to me would be is if he got hurt. And really, they have some nice guys behind him, but nobody where I go, oh, this guy has to get the ball. So if you were to pick a guy early from this squad where it's like, I could see him doing well because tight ends do well in this scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And he has done well as a tight end, as an individual, then it's just a question of like, okay, do you trust what the Texans are doing at the quarterback position to get him the ball? But even then, a lot of offenses that struggle rely on the tight end a lot because, everything's crashing down. Who has the matchup against the linebackers, the tight end?
I can't thank you enough. Always so much fun catching up with you. So,
well, thank you.
And Familia, we still got a few more episodes of the NFL Insider Series. Going to mix in some other fantasy analysts. Kind of a couple other interviews in here. Kind of getting you ready for the NFL season. Also, so make sure you're setting those notifications up for Familia FFB on YouTube. Get that like, hit that subscriber button. Yeah, you know what? Again, our numbers have doubled just in this from this series. So in the last month. So keep them going. And also make sure, again, if you're going to underdogfantasy.com, use the promo code Familia23. Going to get matched up to the first $100. I'm Jorge Martin. You can find me on Twitter at Jorge Martin17. Everywhere else, it's Familia FFB. You can and FamiliaFFB.com. I will have some content here and there before get you ready for the season. Again, one more time to Stephanie, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias to all of you for joining us. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.